Nobody anticipated that the unseen woman would emerge as the most influential figure in that space. The workplace already hummed with the usual morning energy, yet Evelyn's entrance through the side entrance went completely unnoticed as she wheeled her maintenance cart at her characteristic measured rhythm. Her forest green uniform served as protective covering, her expression serene and modest, revealing nothing of the feelings she carefully concealed within. To the company leaders, she remained transparent, merely the custodial worker. The individual who cleaned their workspaces, cleared their waste bins, and sometimes shared courteous acknowledgments with the rare few who recognized her presence. This pattern had persisted for years at Hawthorne and Beck, a flourishing enterprise located in downtown Dallas, Texas. Evelyn, approaching her late 50s, had adapted to the daily grind and the contemptuous glances. She caught wind of their mockery when they assumed she couldn't hear. The manner in which her existence was regarded as bothersome. "She's not accomplishing anything at this moment," someone had grumbled just the previous week while she patiently waited for their conference to conclude so she could sanitize the meeting space. Yet Evelyn remained composed. She always did. She maintained her focus downward, her movements deliberate as she performed her duties. She understood better than to provide them the pleasure of witnessing her response. What they remained unaware of, what nobody in that workplace knew, was that Evelyn possessed a secret. A secret so significant it could completely transform the entire establishment. However, Evelyn wasn't reckless. She valued patience, observation, and timing. Today, though, as she navigated the well-illuminated corridors, her composed exterior concealed the reality that she was approaching her limit. The morning progressed predictably. Evelyn buffed the glass entrances to brilliance, cleaned the plush lobby carpeting, and arranged the messy workstations of those who never considered the stacks of documents they abandoned. She labored conscientiously, even while discussions about major contracts and career advancements drifted through the atmosphere. One particular exchange, however, captured her focus. She wasn't deliberately listening in. That wasn't her character. But the voices carried loudly and couldn't be avoided. "The stockholders' gathering is approaching next week," one manager declared. His manner was self-satisfied, nearly conceited. "And there's nothing for us to worry about. The board appreciates the financial results, and the CEO remains untouchable. Nobody sensible would dare challenge his authority." Evelyn stopped briefly, clutching her cart handle more firmly. She understood what they didn't. They had no clue how mistaken they were. But Evelyn didn't allow her mind to wander extensively. There remained tasks to complete, and she needed to prepare for what lay ahead. Hawthorne and Beck took pride in its polished, contemporary appearance. Its corporate center, a soaring glass tower in central Dallas, frequently appeared in trade publications as an emblem of business achievement. Within, nevertheless, the truth was considerably less impressive. The environment was merciless, and the higher your position, the less concern you seemed to show for those beneath you. Evelyn had invested almost 10 years in those corridors, silently watching. She witnessed promotions awarded to the most vocal individuals, not the most capable employees. She observed the hushed agreements behind private doors, the methods people used to hide errors by placing responsibility on those powerless to protect themselves. And then there was the chief executive, Alan Greaves, a figure who projected command and smugness equally. Alan represented the type of leader who demanded respect through intimidation. His voice resonated in conferences, his cutting remarks quieting even the most confident managers. For him, achievement was paramount, and individuals were instruments to be utilized. Evelyn frequently overheard his cynical comments about staff members who didn't match the company image. "She remains employed here," Evelyn had once heard Alan mention regarding one of the senior administrative assistants. "Why hasn't she been encouraged to retire? It's not as though she contributes value." The remarks weren't the only issue. The organization was filled with questionable practices that were hidden away. Incentive payments were secretly reduced for lower-tier personnel, while the management team celebrated unprecedented earnings. Evelyn learned about excessive spending claims, suspicious customer transactions, and even the discreet termination of someone who had attempted to expose wrongdoing. The custodial team, including Evelyn, suffered most from this environment. She had witnessed her colleagues reduced to tears after being reprimanded for missing a tiny particle of dirt. She had seen their wages remain frozen while their responsibilities grew. And naturally, there was the persistent dismissal of their dignity. The way individuals avoided looking at them directly, condescended to them, or regarded them as office equipment. One particular event remained vivid in Evelyn's mind. A young trainee had accidentally dropped coffee on the stone flooring near Alan's workspace. The trainee stood motionless, obviously frightened, as Alan appeared around the corner. "Are you serious?" Alan erupted. His attention shifted to Evelyn, who had just passed by carrying her cleaning supplies. "Take care of this mess," he commanded her, as though she was responsible. She remained silent. She didn't need to speak. The trainee offered repeated apologies, but Alan dismissed him with a careless gesture. To him, people like Evelyn and the trainee were merely background distractions. These experiences had accumulated throughout the years, each one like adding another rock to an expanding pile. Evelyn's endurance was remarkable, but she wasn't unaffected by the burden of it all. She experienced the pain of disrespect, the weariness of being overlooked. But Evelyn had never been one to break down. She allowed those experiences to strengthen her determination, preserving them like weapons for when she would require them. The staff around her might not have recognized her quietness, but it conveyed everything. Evelyn was constantly observing, constantly hearing, and the more she witnessed, the more she understood that the company's prosperity came at the cost of its compassion. But Evelyn wasn't merely recording observations. She was silently strategizing, and shortly, the elements would begin aligning. For years, Evelyn had protected her secret carefully, not from fear, but from tactical reasoning. She wasn't simply a custodial worker. She was the primary stockholder in Hawthorne and Beck, a position she had received following the sudden death of her deceased spouse Martin. Martin had been a discreet investor during the company's initial phase, gathering shares when nobody had faith in its possibilities. When he passed away, those shares had grown into a controlling interest. Initially, Evelyn was uncertain how to handle this unexpected authority. She wasn't a business expert or a regular boardroom participant. She was simply Evelyn, a woman who had brought up 2 children, struggled through life's obstacles, and discovered comfort in predictability. But gradually, as she continued her silent work inside the company, she understood the significance of her situation. Remaining invisible provided her with benefits. She could watch without drawing attention, hear without creating suspicion, and discover everything necessary about the individuals who believed they controlled the organization. The incident that drove her beyond her tolerance occurred during a regular evening shift. Evelyn had just completed cleaning the executive lounge when she overheard 2 department heads laughing over beverages. They were discussing staff reductions, finding humor in how simple it was to eliminate unnecessary personnel without anyone showing concern. "Some of these individuals behave as if their positions have importance," one commented while laughing. "They don't understand how easily they can be replaced." Evelyn remained motionless behind the entrance, her fingers gripping the cleaning cloth. These weren't simply statistics on a report. These were actual people, individuals with households, expenses, and aspirations. Yet to these men, they were nothing beyond disposable resources. That evening, Evelyn sat at her modest kitchen table with tea and a writing pad. She began documenting, uncertain where it would take her, but recognizing she could no longer remain quiet. She recorded the unethical behaviors she had observed, the individuals who had been mistreated, and the incidents that had stayed with her throughout the years. When morning arrived, she had created a strategy that would transform everything. Her initial move was to investigate further. Evelyn utilized her building access to collect information most people wouldn't question. She mentally recorded conversations, monitored schedules, and even carefully examined documents left on workstations. She wasn't taking or prying. She was simply connecting details, creating a comprehensive picture of the company's operations. The second phase involved seeking assistance. Evelyn had several reliable supporters outside the organization, friends who were attorneys, financial experts, and former staff members who had departed under negative circumstances. She communicated what she knew and requested their guidance. Gradually, They assisted her in developing a plan that would not only reveal the harmful environment but also protect the company's future. The final phase proved most challenging. Evelyn recognized that confronting the CEO and board would demand more than evidence alone. It would require bravery, self-control, and strong confidence in her own value. She rehearsed her presentation before her mirror, her voice calm yet determined. She understood this extended beyond herself. It represented everyone who had been dismissed, undervalued, or treated as inferior. The stockholders' meeting was approaching within a week, and Evelyn felt prepared. She wasn't entering that room as a custodial worker. She was entering as someone who controlled the company's destiny. But as the day drew near, Evelyn couldn't ignore the significance of her intended actions. This wasn't merely a confrontation. This was a moment of reckoning. The stockholders' meeting day arrived with confidence permeating throughout the building. Managers moved through the corridors with swagger, their conversations filled with enthusiasm about another year of exceptional profits. None noticed Evelyn moving her cleaning cart toward the executive conference room, her expression calm and mysterious as usual. The boardroom contrasted sharply with the remaining office space. Its extended polished table sparkled under gentle illumination, and the wall-to-wall windows provided a panorama of the Dallas cityscape. Around the table sat the company's most influential individuals, including Alan Greaves at the front, his bearing authoritative, his expression radiating smugness. Evelyn entered silently as always, positioning a water pitcher on the side table. Nobody acknowledged her. To them, she was merely scenery. But this time, Evelyn remained. "Pardon me," she said, her voice slicing through the room like steel. Heads rotated, puzzled and mildly irritated. Alan barely acknowledged her. "We're conducting business," he said dismissively. "I understand," Evelyn responded, her tone steady yet firm. "That's precisely why I'm present." Alan reclined in his seat, a patronizing smile appearing on his face. "Unless you're here to tidy up behind us, I recommend you exit." Evelyn didn't waver. Instead, she moved forward, retrieving a folder from her cart and setting it on the table. The Hawthorne and Beck logo was displayed prominently, accompanied by the words, "Shareholder Documentation." The room became silent. Alan's smile disappeared as Evelyn started speaking. "For years, I've observed this company succeed on the efforts of people you refuse to acknowledge," she stated, her voice unwavering. "I've witnessed employee mistreatment, ethical boundaries violated, and profits placed above humanity. And I've remained silent until this moment." Whispers spread around the table. One board member leaned forward, examining the folder closely. "What is this?" "This," Evelyn said, opening the folder, "is evidence. Evidence of the unethical conduct, the poor management, and the complete disregard for the people who sustain this company." Alan's voice echoed across the room. "Who do you believe you are, entering here and making such claims? You're a custodial worker." Evelyn faced his stare with composure that unsettled the room. "No, Mr. Greaves. I'm the majority shareholder of Hawthorne and Beck. And today, I'm terminating your employment." The astonishment spread through the room like lightning. Alan's complexion became ashen, his confident manner dissolving as the statement registered. "You must be joking," he said, his voice slightly shaking. Evelyn remained steadfast. "No, Mr. Greaves. I am not." She addressed the board members, her look penetrating. "I've invested years collecting evidence, and it's all documented here. The excessive expense claims, the unethical dismissals, the harassment cases you've concealed. I possess the authority to remove him from office, and I'm exercising it." The room descended into disorder. Alan attempted to protest, his voice becoming desperate. But the board members quickly grasped the seriousness of the circumstances. One after another, they approached Evelyn, asking questions, reviewing the folder, and verifying her accusations. The voting process didn't require much time. Evelyn had completed her research, and the evidence she provided left no uncertainty. Alan Greaves was dismissed from his role that very afternoon, his objections ignored. As security accompanied Alan from the building, Evelyn stood in the boardroom, her posture straight and her expression serene. The managers who had previously overlooked her now regarded her with wonder and remorse. But Evelyn wasn't seeking their validation. She had already focused on what would follow. News of Alan Greaves' removal spread throughout the company rapidly. By the following morning, the entire workplace buzzed with amazement and curiosity. How could the custodial worker, quiet, humble Evelyn, have been the majority shareholder throughout? Conversations filled the break areas and hallways, but this time they weren't contemptuous. They carried respect, admiration, and even some regret. Evelyn, however, didn't enjoy the spotlight. She returned to the workplace the next day, not carrying cleaning supplies, but with a notepad and a strategy. She wasn't there simply to dismiss a harmful CEO. She was there to reshape the company's destiny. In the following weeks, Evelyn worked relentlessly to establish reforms. She began with the people who had been ignored for years. Pay increases were provided to the custodial staff and other undervalued employees. Evelyn ensured that the Human Resources Department handled harassment and discrimination complaints with seriousness, establishing an independent oversight body to guarantee openness. She also confronted the harmful environment that had developed under Alan's direction. The board, previously complicit in his behavior, now found themselves answerable. Evelyn demanded regular educational programs, emphasizing ethics, inclusion, and employee welfare. For the first time in years, Hawthorne and Beck employees felt recognized, heard, and appreciated. But Evelyn didn't conclude there. She organized company-wide meetings, welcoming employees from all departments to express their experiences and suggestions. She listened attentively, recording notes, and ensuring everyone had input in determining the company's direction. One afternoon, while Evelyn walked through the workplace, she was approached by a young trainee, the same individual who had spilled coffee near Alan's office months earlier. "Thank you," he said genuinely, "for everything you've accomplished. You've transformed this environment." Evelyn smiled warmly. "No, we've transformed this environment. Together." Outside the building, the Dallas skyline sparkled in the late afternoon sunlight. Evelyn paused momentarily, gazing up at the towering glass structure she had once entered unnoticed. It had been a challenging journey, but she had accomplished what many considered impossible. This wasn't simply about dismissing a CEO or revealing corruption. It was about demonstrating that regardless of how invisible someone might feel, they can possess the power to create significant change. Evelyn had shown that perseverance, patience, and honesty could overcome arrogance and greed. She took a deep breath, experiencing a tranquility she hadn't felt in years. Then she walked away, not to disappear into the background, but to welcome a new phase in her life. Life frequently underestimates the silent strength of those who watch, persevere, and take action when the moment is appropriate. Evelyn's story shows us that the most unlikely individuals can become the driving forces for meaningful transformation. If you found her experience motivating, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that demonstrate the power of resilience and justice.